Welcome back to Kaiju Rider, where Google promised perfect skies and no overcast. So that's great. I'm just filming because I've got one last ride before we move. One for the road, I guess. There's a clear in the fog. It looks like it's lifting. Like instantly lifting. Is it just behind me? Yeah, I guess it was just in town. Maybe Google was right and just one cloud didn't want to listen. October 31st, Halloween 2024. I'm only saying that because my videos don't necessarily come out in order, so I don't know when this one's gonna go up. What I'm thinking for this video is explaining tire pressure and airing down, because there's of course internet forum hearsay and social influencer hearsay, but then there's what the manufacturers say, and then there's what the research says. But a reason for bringing it up here is when you're on a really cold road, what makes tires work well and get good grip is warmth. A cold tire does not grip. That's why for the most part MotoGP bases their calendar around summers. So the southern hemisphere gets more attention in the northern hemisphere's winter and vice versa. But when I'm in the winter, I drop my pressure in the metric units. 250 is the normal for the rear. I'll probably run 240 through the winter, because a softer tire, though it wears out a bit quicker, it does warm up a bit better. And that's not a huge difference, but on the street, it has, in my experience, been just enough to get that slight extra traction. Oh, wild boar. I've never seen a wild boar. I really hope that showed up on the camera. I'm actually a little nervous because that's the most dangerous animal in the country. Just because I saw him, we're going to go a little further before we air down. And you've got to leave the bike on or it'll reset everything. So the front tire, I'm only airing it down for winter. But generally speaking, the research I've seen has suggested you don't air down the front, and if you do, you barely do. Now someone's saying it's because there's no safety bead on this tubeless situation, but I'm going to leave it at, let's just say 218 because it's a weird number. 225 is what's recommended. Airing down, even with a safety bead, the manufacturers say don't. The bike manufacturer. The tire manufacturers usually say don't. That's by my experience. I've tried airing way down, I've tried airing partial way down. I've gone as low as 160, and I had no benefit that I could notice. We're going to go to just about 200. And that is what the manufacturers seem to suggest. If you average everything together, even on a stiffer tire, because you have to remember the weight of the bike, this is not a dirt bike. It's like two dirt bikes. 20% in the rear does give you better grip. And it does depend on what tire you have. So if you have a mostly road-focused tire, you're not going to gain much either way. The real reason I have found a benefit in airing down is not actually for traction. It's for rocks to not buck you all around. And again, the front, I've just noticed no benefit either way. The front is set. I'll check it once a month. On the rear, I'll be modulating between 195 and 240 for the winter. And that's right about 20% of the recommended pressures, minus a little bit for the cold. And make no mistake, I am cold. I don't enjoy doing this every time. In fact, this is the worst part about riding off-road. More than mud, I hate adjusting tire pressures multiple times a day. Take my phone off, put it in my pocket, so that I have it if I fall down the mountain separate from the bike. And a little public service announcement. I usually edit this part out of my video where I start the bike and just start riding. I never do that. I always wait a few seconds for oil to cycle through and to make sure it's warm. Especially because it's winter. Cold oil doesn't do much, and when you turn the bike on, there's typically no oil in the engine. That's why hybrids have excess engine wear compared to standard engines. Ooh, a quail of sorts. I think it's a quail. It looks like a quail. I forgot to put my safety glasses on. Someone's asking what this handbag is. It's whatever from Enduristan. I got the bigger one, or this handlebar bag. I got it because it's the only thing I could find in Japan that was waterproof. So that's why that stop-start technology at stoplights, very good for your fuel economy, as long as it's quick stop-starts. Not so good for your engine. And I can say for 100% sure, the air down in the rear is making a difference. As I said in the tire video, winter riding, running a slightly lower pressure will help your tire warm up a bit more. The amount that it will deform to the road will be microscopic. The amount that it'll heat up on the road will be small. It's kind of like having a glass of water. -1 degree or 30 degree Fahrenheit, and one that's 33 degree Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius. One of you has a cold glass of water and one of you has a glass of ice, solid. That little temperature increase, like, I assume very few of you have ever been a pit crew for a race. I have. I was in charge of tires. When you're pulling the tire off, and obviously different speeds, different compounds, but it is literally melting in front of your eyes. Like, you are watching the tire boil, and you need to wear protective gloves or you will actually burn yourself on that tire. So the amount of air pressure you need depends on a lot of things. What tire are you running? How heavy is your bike? How fast are you riding it? There's another quail, another quail. Those were the ladies. I couldn't see them, so the camouflage works. But a decision you have to make for safety, slightly high air pressure versus slightly low. And I do mean slight. I'm not saying to triple the air pressure. That's a terrible idea. Extra pressure will help your tire last a little longer. The lower pressure will wear it out quicker. Say you have a proper off-road tire like I do now, where there's big knobs that flex and move. That'll add more heat, so it'll warm up better than a proper street tire in the dirt. Obviously it won't warm them up as much on the pavement because it'll have more cool air taking care of it. Wet, cold leaves. People say I'm not going as fast as other times. Of course not. Wet, cold leaves. Pro tip. It's time for a shift change for the paramedics in 20 minutes. So do I want an unrested all-night worker, or do I want to be safe for 20 more minutes so that the ambulance call goes to someone well-rested at the start of the day? Because that's a cliff. No matter how easy this road looks, what's under the wet leaves? Is it mud? Do I slide? Cliff. So your warmer tire grips better. And even off-road, or in the dirt, or whatever we call this, see these rocks? Well, a warm tire is gripping. And that's where you get the hard versus soft tires. Hard tires obviously last longer. Motoz, generally a very hard tire, whichever one you pick. Dunlop's Mission is an extremely hard tire, and they both are the longest lasting setups for adventure bike tires. But if you look at a proper adventure tire that can actually move off-road and hold its own in the street, those two are the hardest ones. So they last much longer. They don't get as much grip. Now, if you look at reviews of the Dunlop in the street, it's getting plenty of grip, but it's not getting as much grip as a softer version of itself. If they made the same tire just softer, there'd be more grip. Now, a downside is it would wear quicker, but when it comes to how to make a softer or harder tire, well, there's air pressure. And you have to remember that we're not just riding on balloons. It is the air that you're riding on, and that works as an extra cushion beyond just the suspension. That air is not the only thing. Like, tires are made of different types of plies. There's cross plies, there's vertical plies, and then some of them have steel cables inside. You see the cords when you wear it too much. I've done that in the past. Some of them have fiberglass, some of them have nylon, but it's all very complicated. And a hard sidewall, though it's harder to mount, a hard sidewall does better under lower pressures. And I've done some research, and people will tell you lowering your tire pressure for something like sand or mud will give you more surface area because the tire squishes down more. And that does make sense on surface value. But I've done some research, and Brett Tex has an interesting video. You don't actually get that much more coverage. To get that much coverage, you would have to air down so much that you're risking coming off the bead. You'd have to air down so much that you would risk denting your rim, because the tire is not just about grip and power, it's also a helmet for your wheel, if you will. And if you air down too much on tubeless, you will risk coming off the rim, especially if you don't have a safety bead on a DIY tubeless. And people are saying that's why you've got to have tubes. It's not necessarily true. On the side of the road, if you have to reset a bead with a tube, it's much easier. It will always be able to reset if the tube is not punctured. Whereas these tires, with my little pump, I don't think I could get them back on the bead. According to tire manufacturers and the bike manufacturers, if you had a tube tire versus tubeless, low pressure is more likely to create a pinch flat on your tube tire than it is to kick you off the bead on a tubeless. So those are all things to keep in mind with tire pressure. And I should say now, do everything at your own risk. This is me sharing what I have discovered. And you should remember that I am some dude with a camera. Yes, I'm a former mechanic. Yes, I do a lot of research. Yes, I believe what I'm saying is accurate. I'm one guy who is not a tire manufacturer. And as far as being a mechanic, all I really know is good ways to get tires on and off and to put the pressure that the manufacturer suggests. I am just one voice, and you don't know me. So am I actually in Japan? But was I actually a mechanic? I've never filmed at the dealership. Is it photoshopped? You don't know. Tons of people will put out something just to get your attention. Like I saw a 10-minute video called The Most Important Skill for New Riders Off-Road. That's learning how to be comfortable with your brakes. It took him 10 minutes to say, you have to learn how to use your brakes off-road by practicing. Boom, 10-minute video, 20 seconds. But people will put out dangerous information for clicks, and they may not even know they're wrong. How is the sun in front of me every direction? It's in front of me going the other way and this way. I'm not sure physics is working today. If you watch this video and your takeaway is to do exactly what I said, where I said, how I said it, I think that's a mistake. On all my videos for that matter. I've made mistakes, and I pin comments to explain when I discover my mistakes. Do your own research, especially for things like tire pressure. Like I made this oil change video. Should you change at this many or this many? It's 100 kilometers early, 100 kilometers late. There should be no safety risk in that story. But tires, if you're too low a pressure and it comes off the rim at speed, well, imagine riding down the hill with no tire. Forget no pressure. Imagine going through a corner and it comes off the speed. And if you're at too high a pressure and you hit a sharp rock and pop, again in a corner, here's that cliff I keep talking about. So it's really a big deal for safety to get it right. So don't just trust some dude with a camera on the internet who sounds confident. The USA consistently tests as the most confident nation on average Ironically, we test as the most confident in math skills, but like 37th in the world in actual math skills. And that's what makes a good lawyer. It's not about being right. It's about being confident and convincing people that you're right, even when you're wrong. And research is not the same thing as going on a forum, because that's full of people that might be lying. Research is looking at what the manufacturers say, looking at private testing, because one tire on my bike will last for ages, and on your bike not last at all. Well, maybe I wear it down to the cords and you don't. Maybe your bike's much heavier than mine. Maybe my 91 horsepower is nothing compared to your 200 horsepower. But all my research shows if you're on a road-going adventure bike, even in the dirt, airing down seems to be the wrong decision. In the rear, 20%, no more than 30. So that's that ramble. Till next time, this has been Coyote Rider, and I'm just going to go up and down this road a couple more times. I just film it in silence to see if I fall. But till next time, vroom vroom.